my experience, I've obviously worked for several magazines, and I can't actually remember how we used to, because it's always been arts and entertainment for me as well, but I can't actually remember how we used to gather information before we had the internet. I remember we used to send people down the library to research things and come back with a floppy disk at the end of the day, and we used to get the information that way. But yeah, I mean, definitely recently, I've been a lot more desk bound. In Metro, there was a lot of collation in that way. But Metro had a funny relationship with the internet and with blogging, really. We used to get a lot of our small events, the vibey events, the jump bounds going around town on a bus and things like that, we used to get from the blogs. And the vibey things like the library changing, all that kind of thing, we would get from the blogs. But again, like being arts and entertainment, that you can plan, 2-3 months ahead. You know who's coming to town, what's going to happen. So that's quite easy to do. And the PRs feed you and send you CDs and all that kind of thing. So only until I'd say the last 2 or 3 months did I really start properly engaging with Twitter, and that was I learned how to use it very quickly, and it became really useful. And yeah, from what I've heard from my wife, also is now on Twitter as well, and she works for Smooth Radio, and it's become a really useful, for a desk-bound journalist, really useful way of actually gathering information without having to leave the office, and having that network that Andrew mentioned. Yeah, that's my experience.
The thing we used to do was just read, especially when I was working at smaller stations, was just to read the daily paper and just circle it in the morning and go, what can I have that this afternoon? Or even what I found especially useful actually was the small kind of the free weekly paper, because it would be so packed full of just everything, and you could kind of turn it into something else. So whether it was an event thrown forward to that, or I found those little papers actually more useful than sometimes the daily one, because daily news, by the time you've got it in the afternoon, it can be out of date, or people perceive it to be out of date. Whereas with a weekly one, they've already thought they need something that can last the whole week. So it's quite a useful resource for just getting whatever's happening, opinions, events. I found those really, really useful.
What about? Sorry.
I was just going to say, it's a strange relation, though, isn't it? Because you've got the newspaper decides to do the story on that day, and it's already 2 or 3 days old, and then you're picking it up as a broadcaster, and then going, yeah, this is in the post. So like by the time you broadcast it, it's maybe 4 or 5 days since the actual event. So you have to make it.
You have to make it relevant, either post
5
event
days after, yeah.
or justify it in some way, saying, well, this is, whether it's representing a trend, or a community that's kind of fought back against something or whatever. It was, it was that case of twisting it. Or if you're on a little radio station, just use it. just go with it.
That's what I did at the local radio station. I was the only person in the office. In the radio, to tell the truth, everything was automated. We just had to record like 3-minute blocks 3 times a day, and the news I got from the internet and from local newspapers, because I had to have local news. And many times I had to go to because they didn't even buy the newspapers, I had to go to the cafe at the shopping mall where the radio was. I had to pick up, how can I have the newspapers? Oh, this one is nice. I'll get that one. Take the facts out, write it down, read it, put it on here. It was like that. So, but there's one thing that didn't talk about. When most of journalists nowadays, I guess, are desk journalists, and they get a lot of information through the internet, via press release, news agencies, and there is this thing that all interns have to do when they go to a newspaper, especially big ones. The first thing they do in the morning is call the police, the firemen, all those officers to see what happened tonight, everything, and that's the worst part of the job. I hate that. I always hated that. But the major experience I had in a proper company It was at the National Public Radio in the local department. That was a time where I really learned that we have to really go out, but we were following an agenda. So everything was scheduled. We have to do this today because there'll be this meeting, the city hall meeting. There is the ritualized and a routine that we had to follow. That's what I did like 10 years ago, but lately it has been quite complicated because I was just ripping off other people's news to put on the radio. But when you talk about Twitter as a main source, yeah, you can say you were saying you can stay at the newsroom and get all the news. I was in my living room when the Hudson thing happened, and it was fun because I just got into journalism mode. I was going to watch Family Guy or something. Yeah, I was in my pajamas and then Robert Skoll said retweets. An airplane is about to crash in the Hudson, and of course I got into journalism mode and all by myself because I wasn't looking for anyone. But I have this huge list of Twitter followers, and I retweeted it, and within 15 minutes time, the Portuguese television had a picture of one of the first pictures, and which became kind of a case study for them. But because they're really investing on Twitter right now, and they have a really good online presence, and what the situation proved to me is that you don't have to be a journalist to do it. Yeah, you have to have journalistic skills, but you can get, as long as you have your sources right and you try to investigate by yourself, you can add content, and just by gathering all the different sources and just mix them all together and create a career and body of work and proper news story, which is rather interesting. And only 15 minutes was really great.
But I still do it now. If I see a big story breaking on Twitter, I will still put the TV on. That's still my first thing.
That's the first thing I do all the time.
That's probably trouble because the internet tends to get things first. I mean, Sky will flash things and then say, oh, shit, we got that wrong, we're going to take it down again. Flash first, check later.
Sorry to interrupt. You know who first published the news about Michael Jackson's death?
Twitter, was it?
No, it was
TMZ.
Oh, that's right, of course. Yeah.
And the big TV stations, they never quoted the site. Nobody really.
Yeah.
The problem was that TMZ had already been discredited on a number of stories beforehand. So the Los Angeles Times, for example, wasn't prepared to take their word for it, and understandably so, I think.
But there are two things. Main sources for journalists are other journalists.
Well,
film work,
one thing that you become acutely aware of if you work in local journalism is that most of the stories of national journalism come from local journalism.
Yeah.
And I'd see a number of our stories filtering through to national newspapers. In fact, I remember one evening I was getting off the bus after going to a council meeting, which obviously is incredibly glamorous. And I got a phone call from a reporter at the Mail on Sunday, asking me about a story that I'd written, asking me if the quotes that I'd got were really quotes or whether I'd made them up. Which I was quite rude to him, obviously, when he asked me that. And the next day, in the Mail on Sunday, there was I think it was the page 3 or the page 5 lead story. It was my story. Completely changed and altered in a sort of Daily Mail style to sort of and I mean it was just really weird because it was the first time it had ever happened to me, where all the things I'd written had been taken by another journalist and just mixed up and then put back on the page in a pretty nasty way, actually, pretty unpleasant. It was about a woman called Fiona Miller, who is Alistair Campbell, who used to be the press guy for Tony Blair's. It's his wife, or not his wife, but his common-law wife. And she'd been saying something about a drug dealer who was outside a school, the school that her children go to. And they turned this round and made it into a completely different story. And I realised then that the relationship between the local press and the national press is very, very close, but it's not an equal one at all. We do all the work, and they get all the glory.